Hello everybody, Fausty Insomnia here with a new build video. I got a PvP Magic Warden here. It's good for duels, BGs, and open world. So let's take a look at our stats. So buffed up, we are looking at about 25k max mag, almost 29k max health, almost 15k max stam, 2,662 mag recovery, very high, and then almost 1,500 stamina recovery. So now, when we refresh our resolve buffs, we are looking at 32k spell and just a little over 27,000 physical resistance and almost 2k crit resist. So beefy stats all around. Now, our weapon spell damage on our front bar. Now, with our weapon spell enchantment up, we will be at 6,100 spell and weapon damage. So, very strong there. Now, in terms of the food, now you can play around with the food and you can play around with the attributes here: 24 into mag and 20 and 40 into health. Now, the reason why you can play around with it is because we need to stay below 30,000 health, and it's because of the piercing cold passive, which got changed. So as long as you are 30,000 health and above, you will have 12% block mitigation. But if you go below 30,000 health, which is what we want, you get 8% damage increase. Now, with this as a factor here, I run Ghostly Eyeball, because Ghostly Eyeball, the max mag and the mag recovery route is really strong. We only have one stamina ability in our whole kit, so stamina is not going to be a problem here. We don't need Bewitched, we don't need Jewels, so we can buff up our mag stats. That'll be better, right? And then we have the Lover Mundus, penetration being the highest form of damage in PvP. You can't go wrong with it. And then Vampire Stage 1. We are Vampire, so here you can go Stage 3. Our sustain could handle it, but if you get into really outnumbered fights and you solo a lot, going with Stage 1 might be the better route there. Because if you go to Stage 3, I believe it's an 8% cost increase in all your abilities. It can get a little hairy there. But with that being said, let's get into our sets. So we're going to start with our mythic item, Torque of the Last Alien King. Now, this is one of the strongest ones in the game. Now, so the first item gives us 15% damage reduction. Second, 1,337 weapon and spell damage, and then 500 mag and stam recovery. The downside is all our other items that we wear. So let's say, for example, Ice Furnace, marked out in red, and it says disabled by Torque of the Last Alien King. So our 2, 3, 4, 5 set pieces do not work when we have this mythic, but that's okay. If you factor in that the set Buffer of the Swift, a light armor set, gives you 10% damage reduction, this gives you 15%. If you consider, say, any other damage set, it on average might give you 400 to 500 weapon spell damage. This gives you 1,337. So 2 damage sets might meet this mark of weapon spell damage, but in general, you're going to get more weapon spell damage out of this than 2 damage sets. Now, the mag and stem recovery, very high, slightly less than Wretched Vitality, but that's okay. If you factor in everything else that we're getting, this is one of the best PvP mythics in the game. Now, we have Bloodthirsty on all our jewelry. Now, since Warden does not have a clear good execute, we need to have that extra pressure when they get low. Now, you can go infused if you want, and with Torque, building up your weapon spell damage would be very good, but getting that extra oomph worth of damage when they get low will be beneficial there. Now, in terms of the weapons, we have dual maces, one nerned, one sharpened, weapon spell damage glyphs on them. Now, you can go double sharpened if you want. I just want to make the most out of the Last Alien King that we can, well, without sacrificing too much pen, because of the weapon spell damage stacks. And then we have an Ice Staff on the back bar, defending, weapon spell enchantment, definitely a good go-to. And then, now, remember, it does not matter what set pieces you run, since the Last Alien King basically overrides them. Now, I have 3 heavy, and then I have 3 light and 1 medium. Now you can play around with it. Since it's the last Alien King, you can do whatever you want. I find that having 2 to 3 pieces of heavy and then majority light or even light after is best, and having one max and then having one stam piece here would be good for the Undaunted passive. And then obviously big pieces, you're gonna have tri-stats on them for the most you can get out of your resources. And then as long as you maintain your health under 30k, generally you want to have it 28k to 29k. You can play around with the glyphs here if you want. Not a big deal there. Now, in terms of our skills here, we're gonna start with our back bar. So we got the blue Betty, the Betty Netch, pretty good stable to Warden. You need it for the major sorcery buff. Acts as a cleanse, and some people don't know, but because of one of our animal companions passives here under right here, Bond with Nature, anytime one of your animal companions gets unsummoned or ends, it will give you a heal. So you can just spam this, right? If you're really tapped out of resources or whatnot, or you're trying to get a nasty dot off you, you get a little bit of heal, and then you can spam it. Now, with what we're doing here, we also have Flare. Now, this is a flex spot, but I love this ability, not because it's the anti-Nightblade ability. You can throw a flare on the ground, and it brings Nightblades out of stealth. But the major protection is huge. Very huge. And then, because of the support passive, you get an additional 10% mag recovery, which adds to that extra stat. Now, if you do not want to run this ability, you can run Living Trellis or Leeching Vines, one of the morphs. Does not matter. This is still a good ability here. And then you could run Shimmering Shield. All right, both of those are acceptable if you don't want to run Flare. And then we have Ice Fortress. Obviously, you need it. It's your major resolve buff. Minor protection is also nice, but with minor protection, major protection, and then the extra 15% damage mitigation from the last Alien King, that gives us 30% damage mitigation. That is huge, especially on a damage build. You are very tanky. And then with our heal. Now, the Warden heal, garbage. Absolute garbage. If you go with Arctic Blast, you can't hit anyone with this if you want to heal. All right, and Polar Winds scales with your max HP, which, as we know about Piercing Cold, if you stack up your max HP, you'll get less damage. So we have to go with the Healing Soul one here, which is better by default. You get a heal over time, and then you also get Major Vitality. So all around, very, very good. And then Vigor, our only stem ability on the build. Obviously our major minor resolve buff, and then a good heal over time for 5 seconds. All right. And then we have Northern Storm. Now with this one, this is your go-to ultimate. We have Dawnbreaker on the front bar, which you can use, but unless it's to finish someone for a guaranteed kill, always go with Northern Storm instead. And it'll make more sense with one of the abilities that we'll be going with on the front bar. But on our front bar, we have Deep Fissure, Major Minor Breach, main source of damage on Warden, can't go wrong with it. And then we have our Fletcher Infection. Now, this is a flex spot here. If you have something else you want to put on, another dot, a scribing skill, you can. But I like this because of the minor vulnerability. So bigger damage numbers. And as a dot, if you cast this a second time, so yes, you would have to add an extra ×2 onto that cost. So it would be over 5,000, but it will increase to 60% damage. And there are crazy builds you can do to get this to even a higher number. But that's a flex spot. If you find something else you want to put on instead, you can. But yeah, Bird of Prey, definitely a must. Major Expedition, Snare Removal, well slotted, you gain Minor Berserk. And then obviously, because of our Animal Companions passive, the more companions abilities we have slotted, the more crit damage we get as a whole. So all around, very needed. And then this is the one I'm going with. This is a Scribing skill. Soul Burst. Now, it does damage, frost damage on it, to proc our Piercing Cold. And then this, the Warden CC, the Warden script, very strong here. So if you look at it, last 2 seconds, and then it ends. When it ends, they get a massive charm, which a charm basically just means they will follow you until they break free of CC of it. Now, with our Northern Storm, people will run into you while this is up if they get hit by this CC. It's hilarious seeing people run at you and then them just dropping their HP at the same time. It's wonderful. And then the last thing we have on it is the Major Savagery and Prophecy, obviously to get our crit chance up. Now, our spammable Arterial Burst here. So, now, if you look here at, say, Screaming Cliff Racer, this does damage, and then you get extra weapon spell damage and set them off balance, but the tooltip is higher with our Arterial Burst, and then it scales even higher based off how low you are, right? If you're PvP and if you're outnumbered, your HP bar is going to be bumping around. So with that being said, 33% damage increase, and then if you go below 50% health, your critical strike chance, 100%. 100%. I've hit people for 12k, 14k with this build. It's really insane. Now, and then we have Dawnbreaker Smiting. Like I said, Northern Storm's your main ult, but if you see someone who's about to die, and they're not going to die without it's being hit by like a Dawnbreaker, like a heavy damage ability, you can drop this on them. All around, I wouldn't deviate from that. You could run Meteor, but I think Dawnbreaker, you don't want to have too high costing ultimates because they're just about both at 200 if you do run Meteor. But now in terms of champion points here, let's have a look. So under our blue champion points here, we'll start with Focus Mending. Very strong. People don't consider the difference between weapon spell damage and healing done and healing received. The amount of weapon spell damage you need to get to 10% healing done is incredibly high. So if you have a chance to ever get extra healing done or received, always go for it. Fighting Finesse, this will build into our Arterial Burst spammable. Higher crit damage, more big damage numbers, can't go wrong with it. And then we have Master at Arms to buff our overall damage. And then we have Ironclad. Reduced damage from direct damage attacks, definitely a must. And then Slippery again. Slippery on this build is very, very strong. Like I said, we don't have a lot of stam, compared to, like, say, a stam build. But this, like I said, will make everything easier. Still one of the best red champion point CPs in the game for PvP. If you look, even like I said, compared to my last build video, if you go to our advanced stats here, now if you look in the upper left hand corner, break free cost 4,403. That's not existent. All right, that's not existent if you have that CP on there. All right, it's definitely a must. Free, break free. And then Survival Instincts, very basic. We have Pain's Refuge. And then you have Sustained by Suffering. Now, you can play with this. I just like having the extra resources. Now, if you want to put on, say, Celerity for extra movement speed, you can. But in general, that is the champion points there. So, now, let's get into the combo here. So, now, you want to start up with all your buffs. You got your Blue Betty. All right, you got your Ice Fortress. And then with Healing Soul, remember, it lasts about 10 seconds for the heal over time. And then the Major Vitality. So you want to preemptively do this. So if you're starting a duel, preemptively start this. All right, so that at least when you pop your Vigor and you bar swap cancel to your front bar, you will have at least a little bit of extra healing going out there. All right, but in terms offensively, so you should start with your Fletcher Infection on, and you can double cast it. You can tell if you look here, there's one, and then if you cast it again, you see you will use your right hand, so you know the extra proc's going off. But once you have that on, Deep Fissure, you can do a couple arterial bursts. Now, with Deep Fissure, if you see in the bottom left-hand corner, it's counting down. The second one on it, the second proc of it, is the one that does all the damage, right? It does a lot more damage, 15,000 compared to 11,000. So you want to make sure that when you do the combo, you put all of it in to the second hit. The second hit is the one that's going to kill people. Okay, and then if you got your ultimate up, since Northern Storm does last about 8 seconds, you have a little wiggle room here. So I'm going to pop this, Northern Storm, Charm down, let it rip. All right, just keep spamming. And then when the second Deep Fissure comes out, there you go. Now, that is the combo there, guys. If you have any questions on the build or anything, let me know in the comments. I will answer them. And you guys have a very good day. Enjoy the clips.